Hello everyone, this is our next session through the book of Acts. The book of Acts is written by, I wonder if you can remember, who wrote the book of Acts? It was Luke, one of Jesus' disciples. And Luke is writing down what has happened. At this point, we're mostly focusing on the Apostle Paul and what is happening to him. Because what happens to him affects where the gospel goes, how far the message of Jesus spreads. So, shall we have a bit of a recap of where we've got to in this section of Acts, because we've covered quite a lot of ground.
We've been exploring the book of Acts, which was written by a man named Luke as a continuation of the Gospel of Luke. Acts began with Jesus telling his followers to spread the good news about his kingdom.
And they would start in Jerusalem, then go out into the neighboring regions, and from there to the ends of the earth.
Now, in Jerusalem, their message was received by many and opposed by many, especially by the leaders of the temple. They were scandalized by this new claim that the whole story of Israel had been fulfilled by Jesus' life, death, and resurrection.
One of these leaders was a man named Saul of Tarsus, who worked tirelessly to stop the movement. That is, until he met the risen Jesus himself. And this encounter transformed Saul from an enemy of Jesus into a herald of his kingdom.
And so for years, he traveled about the Roman Empire using his Roman name, Paul, starting Jesus communities all over.
And one of Paul's greatest desires was that all of these diverse communities would see themselves as one unified people, regardless of their differences, Jew or non-Jew, male or female, slave or free.
Jesus was creating one unified family of equals living together under his rule.
And this brings us to the final section of Acts. Back in Jerusalem, where the movement began, the Jewish followers of Jesus were suffering from a drought and food shortage.
And Paul was so passionate about the church's unity that he began a major fundraising project among the diverse churches he had started. They would pool their money together so he and a group of representatives could take it as a relief gift to Jerusalem.
But it's not safe for Paul in Jerusalem. The Jewish leaders there dislike him so much, they want him dead.
And Paul knew he was walking into a trap. His friends all begged him not to go, but no one could stop him.
And why would Paul risk his life to bring this gift? Couldn't he have sent someone else?
Well, for Paul, this was personal. Jerusalem was where he used to participate in the murder of Jesus' followers, and now he gets to serve them. It's also where Jesus himself was executed, and so for Paul, it would be an honor to suffer there alongside his king.
Paul goes to Jerusalem, and as expected, he's found by his enemies. A mob forms, and they try to kill him. But Roman soldiers save his life by taking him into custody.
The Jewish leaders are accusing Paul of starting a revolt against Rome, but they can't prove it.
And the Romans don't know what to do with him.
Yeah, they can see Paul's not a criminal, but his claim that a crucified Jewish man is the risen king of the world, it keeps getting him into trouble.
And so Paul gets transferred from one court to another.
So this is where we find ourselves. Paul is being passed from courtroom to courtroom. The Romans don't know what to do with him. And so this guy Festus is bringing Paul before King Agrippa.
Those who are to be heard, come forward.
And Festus says, King Agrippa, and all who are present with us, you see this man? The whole Jewish community had petitioned me about him in Jerusalem and here in Caesarea, shouting that he ought not to live any longer. I found he had done nothing deserving of death, but because he made his appeal to the emperor, I decided to send him to Rome. But I have nothing definite to write to His Majesty about him. Therefore, I have brought him before all of you, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that as a result of this investigation, I may have something to write. For I think it is unreasonable to send a prisoner on to Rome without specifying the charges against him. So then Agrippa speaks to Paul.
Your names?
Paul of Tarsus.
Do you know what happens next? I reckon that you could probably guess, because it's often what Paul does when he has an audience of people. Go on, have a guess. What do you think the Apostle Paul did? Yep, he tells people about Jesus. He tells his testimony. Do you remember from last week what a testimony is? It's how someone comes to meet Jesus. It's your story. It's your story of what you have seen and heard. A testimony about Jesus is about how you met Jesus and how your life has been changed by him. And so Paul tells his testimony. Shall we play a little game? Let's play Put Paul's Testimony in Order. So here is 6 pictures from Paul's testimony. Can you put these pictures in order? Okay, they've each got a shape, so you can identify them. So which picture comes first, and then what comes after that, what comes after that, what comes after that, and so you can put them in order. I'm going to give you 1 minute to decide which order these pictures go in, and you can keep track of which order using those shapes. Okay, you've got 1 minute to put these in the right order, starting now. Okay, so let's go through those answers. The first picture that you needed was heart. The Apostle Paul is still called Saul at this point, and he was arresting the Christians to punish them. But then we need cross. Yes. The cross, Jesus meets with Paul on the road to Damascus, and he is blinded. So then we have star, he is led to Damascus. So we have heart, cross, star. Then he meets Ananias, which is triangle, and his sight is restored. So then he goes and tells everybody about Jesus, which is square. So the final shape is circle. So that's the religious leaders, the Jewish leaders were not happy that Paul was telling people about Jesus and insisting that Jesus was God. So we had heart, cross, star, triangle, square, circle. Well done if you got that right. So that was Paul's testimony. And if you remember last week, when Paul told his testimony, it was the point where Paul said he has been told by Jesus to go to the Gentiles, the people who were not Jewish, and tell them about Jesus so that they can be rescued. Well, that was the point. That was their tipping point, wasn't it? And they caused a riot and insisted that Paul was to be put to death. The Romans rescued him. And so how then does the king react to Paul's testimony? Should we find out?
Why is it so difficult to believe that the Messiah has come? He spoke to me. He told me to take his truth into all the world. I have followed his orders, saying nothing but what the prophets and Moses said would take place. That the Messiah must suffer, and that by being the first to rise from the dead, he would proclaim light both to our people and the Gentiles.
You're out of your mind, Paul of Tarsus. Too much learning has driven you insane.
I am speaking the truth. Do you believe the prophets, my king?
Are you going to persuade me to be a Christian now, Paul?
Not only you, but all who are listening to me.
And what other accusations are there against this man?
I have in no way committed any offense against the temple, against the law of the Jews, against the king, or against the emperor.
High priest, this man is doing nothing to deserve death or imprisonment. You've made a mistake, Prophet. I would have set you free today had you not appealed to the Emperor. So now you will be required to go before the Emperor. In Rome. Very long journey for a man who should be free. May your God be with you.
So, Paul is on his way to Rome. Now, what's the point of this passage? Well, it's that the message of Jesus is being taken further and further. Paul may be in chains. He may be under arrest. But the message of Jesus goes wherever Paul goes. And it's off to Rome in Italy. God is still in control, even though Paul is arrested. God is making sure that his gospel about Jesus goes further and further. But that doesn't mean that it's all plain sailing for Paul, does it? Paul is serving Jesus, but things are hard for him. Not everybody wants to hear the message about Jesus. And that's the point that Luke is trying to make.
Throughout this section of Acts, Luke, the writer of the story, has portrayed Paul's trials and imprisonments so that they resemble his previous stories of Jesus' trials and imprisonment. Luke's making an important point. When the people of Jesus follow the way of Jesus, their stories will begin to look like his story, which is beautiful, but it also comes with a cost.
So let me ask you this question then. When you tell your testimony, what reaction do you expect to have? I'm going to ask you again to go and practice your testimony now. So if you remember back to last week, there was lots of different ways that you could tell people about how you met Jesus. That's up to you. But go and have a practice. You can draw it out in pictures. You can just tell somebody who's near you. How do you know about Jesus? How do you know that what you've been told about Jesus is true? And how does it affect your life? But also think about what you would do or say when someone doesn't want to hear it. Because when we tell people about Jesus, some people do believe, but others don't. So we need to be prepared for whatever reaction people give when we tell others about Jesus.